Anthropic has quietly surpassed OpenAI in annualized revenue for the first time ever, setting up what could be the biggest IPO race in tech history. Meanwhile, over 60,000 tech workers lost their jobs in Q1 alone, and a viral video with nearly 58,000 engagements is arguing that nobody, at any level, knows what a human worker is worth anymore. Today, the trillion-dollar contradiction between record AI investment and a broken labor market. From the team at the Synthetic Daily, it's Sunday, April 26th, 2026. Good to have you with us.
We went through about 29 posts, articles, and threads across LinkedIn, Substack, and YouTube to find what actually matters today. Let's get into it.
Here's a number that would have sounded absurd 12 months ago. Anthropic's annualized revenue has crossed $30 billion, surpassing OpenAI for the first time. Let that land for a second. The company that most people still think of as the cautious, safety-focused underdog is now out-earning the company that kicked off the entire generative AI era. According to Trading Keys reporting, Anthropic now holds 32% of the enterprise LLM API market versus OpenAI's 25%. 7 out of every 10 new enterprise customers are choosing Anthropic. And a huge driver? Claude Code, their AI programming tool, which commands 54% market share in its segment and is pulling in over $2.5 billion a year on its own.
Exactly. And on a related note, OpenAI isn't standing still. They hit $25 billion in annualized revenue back in February, and enterprise now accounts for over 40% of their total. But the trajectory lines have crossed, and that changes the calculus for the historic IPO race both companies are barreling toward. OpenAI closed a $120 billion funding round in March at an $850 billion valuation, the largest private tech fundraise ever, and is targeting a Q4 listing on NASDAQ. Anthropic is discussing its own Q4 IPO aiming to raise north of $60 billion. S&P Global and FTSE Russell are even considering fast-track index inclusion rules that would bypass the traditional 12-month seasoning period, potentially forcing tens of billions in passive fund buying within days of these IPOs hitting the market.
And yet, here's the uncomfortable part. HSBC estimates OpenAI will lose $14 billion in 2026 alone, with cumulative losses reaching $44 billion by 2028. Profitability isn't expected before 2030. We're watching two companies sprint toward trillion-dollar public valuations while burning cash at a pace that would have been unthinkable in any previous era of tech. The market is essentially making a bet that whoever wins the enterprise AI platform war will eventually own a margin structure that justifies all of this. That's a big bet. While billions flow into AI companies, the humans who actually work in tech are having a very different experience. Nate B. Jones posted a video this week that racked up nearly 58,000 engagements on YouTube, and the title says it all. Nobody knows what you're worth anymore. It struck such a nerve because it names something people have been feeling at happy hours and in anxious group chats, but haven't been able to articulate clearly.
Nate's core argument is that the old chain of value in tech, production was hard signified effort signified expertise, is now broken because when anyone can generate a polished app with almost no effort, output stops being proof of anything. And this isn't just a junior problem but a mid-career and senior level one too. The layoff numbers underscore the urgency. Over 60,000 confirmed tech job cuts in Q1 alone from Oracle, Amazon, Block, Dell, and Salesforce, and Nate draws a critical distinction. These aren't pandemic over-hiring corrections anymore, but a fundamentally different CFO calculation of how many people plus AI are needed to accomplish a mission. What keeps the video from being pure doom is a 5-principle framework, anchored by comprehension over generation. The idea that deeply understanding what you build matters more than how much you build.
Now, shifting gears a bit, if you want to understand just how distorted the capital landscape has become, Here's one number, $300 billion. That's how much global venture capital was deployed in Q1 2026 alone, according to Crunchbase. It's not just a record. It's more than 50% higher than any previous quarter in the history of venture funding. And 80% of it, $242 billion, went to AI companies. For context, AI accounted for 55% of venture funding in Q1 2025. Now it's 80%. The gravitational pull is almost total.
You know what stood out to me? The concentration at the top is staggering. Foundational AI startups, your OpenAIs, your Anthropics, your XAIs, raised $178 billion across just 24 deals in Q1. That's double what the entire category raised across 66 deals in all of 2025. Elad Gil published an analysis this week showing that the San Francisco Bay Area now accounts for roughly 39% of global unicorn market cap, more than 4 times higher than any other city, up from 29% just a year ago. Among generative AI unicorns specifically, the Bay Area's concentration is even more extreme. Gil calls it a supercluster, and the data bears that out.
The unicorn pipeline itself is running hot. 47 seed and early-stage companies hit unicorn status in Q1 2026. Virtually all of them AI-focused. AnySphere, the company behind the cursor coding tool, went from a $9.9 billion valuation in June 2025 to $29.3 billion just 5 months later, and announced $1 billion in annual recurring revenue. Thinking Machines Lab, valued at $12 billion on its first funding, is reportedly seeking $50 billion for its next round. These aren't multi-year appreciation stories. These are valuations doubling and tripling within months.
Which is wild, right? Because Harrison Chase shared a post from Paraform this week that tried to cut through the noise by ranking startups not on funding or growth metrics, but on talent density. Essentially, which companies are most coveted by top-tier candidates and which consistently attract the best hires. It's an interesting counterpoint to the pure capital view, and it hints at what might actually separate winners from casualties when the music eventually changes tempo.
Let me bring up something related. There's a thread running through several conversations this week that's worth pulling on. Chorik Malmum posted on LinkedIn about GPT 5.5 dropping just 6 weeks after 5.4, with Polymarket giving GPT 6 a 56% chance by September. Her conclusion? Wait for the best model, then build isn't a strategy anymore. It's a trap. You have to optimize for the system, not the model.
That's a great point. That dovetails neatly with what Nate Jones is arguing about individual workers, but also with what NVIDIA researchers and Andrew Ng are saying about AI agents. Chorik highlighted their shared position that most agent tasks are repetitive, narrow, and non-conversational. You don't need a massive LLM for them. Small language models, fine-tuned for specific skills, offer lower latency, lower cost, and are far more scalable. The suggested approach is modular. Build agents as a mix of models, fine-tune small ones for specific capabilities, and gradually migrate pipeline components away from expensive frontier models.
This is comprehension applied at the systems level. It's the same principle Nate is talking about for individual careers, but scaled up to architecture decisions. The teams that understand why they're choosing a particular model for a particular task and can articulate the trade-offs are the teams that will build things that actually hold up. The teams that just throw GPT 5.5 at everything because it's the newest and most powerful, they're the organizational equivalent of a vibe coder who can't explain their own app.
Joe Reis published a Substack piece this week making the case that we should stop comparing AI to the dot-com bubble and start comparing it to electrification. He cites Paul David's landmark 1990 paper, The Dynamo and the Computer, which showed that electric power appeared in factories in the 1880s, but labor productivity didn't meaningfully improve for decades, not until organizations fundamentally reorganized around the new technology. Reis's argument is that we're in roughly 1905 right now. The technology exists. The infrastructure is being built. But the real productivity gains won't arrive until companies restructure how they work, not just what tools they use. That's a more unsettling analogy than a bubble, because bubbles pop and you move on. Electrification took 40 years to fully pay off.
Here's something that caught my eye. While the business side of AI is consumed with revenue races and IPO timelines, the research frontier is quietly converging on a concept that could define the next generation of AI systems. World models. SWYX, Sean Wang, has been running what amounts to a mini-series on latent space over the past quarter, and the breadth of players he's tracking tells you something about how seriously the field is taking this.
The basic idea behind a world model is that instead of an AI system just predicting the next token in a sequence, it builds an internal representation of how the world actually works. Physics, cause and effect, spatial relationships. SWYX's coverage spans World Labs with Fei-Fei Li and Justin Johnson exploring their Marble project, General Intuition's Pim DeWitt working on world models learned from massive gaming datasets, and NVIDIA's Cosmos world model. Google has released Genie 3. And Yann LeCun has raised $1 billion for his AMI initiative and published what he's calling the World Model. LeCun, notably, has a researcher from his team, Gabriel Duloc-Arnold, who just left Google DeepMind after a decade pushing reinforcement learning to join the robotics startup UMA, specifically to work on human-centric robotics that would benefit from exactly these kinds of rich environmental models.
What makes this more than an academic exercise is the convergence with enterprise needs. Nathan Lambert on Interconnect covered RCAI's release of their flagship Trinity large model, and NVIDIA's Brian Catanzaro discussed how NVIDIA's open model program, including the Nematron line, directly benefits their business by fostering an ecosystem where more sophisticated AI applications run on their hardware. When you combine world models with the kind of modular agent architectures that Andrew Ng and NVIDIA researchers are advocating, you start to see the outlines of AI systems that don't just generate text, but actually reason about physical and business environments. That's the research trajectory that could eventually justify those trillion-dollar valuations, or expose them as premature. All right, let's zoom out and talk about the bigger picture. What are the main themes running through everything we covered today? The first big theme is the proof-of-work crisis. As AI commoditizes output, the entire professional signaling system, from resumes to credentials to portfolios, is collapsing, creating a market failure in talent allocation that no institution has yet solved.
Next, revenue without profit. The AI industry is simultaneously generating unprecedented top-line revenue and unprecedented losses, creating a bet-the-farm dynamic where the winners of the platform war inherit enormous margins, and the losers inherit enormous write-offs.
Next, capital concentration is moat. With 80% of global venture funding flowing to AI and the Bay Area holding 91% of AI private market cap, geographic and financial concentration is becoming a self-reinforcing competitive advantage that smaller ecosystems may never overcome.
Next, comprehension as the new literacy. Across individual careers, engineering teams, and architectural decisions, the ability to deeply understand and explain AI-assisted work is emerging as the critical differentiator that separates durable value from expensive accidents.
And the last one, from prediction to physics. The research community's convergence on world models signals a shift from AI systems that manipulate symbols to systems that simulate environments, a transition that could unlock robotics, autonomous systems, and enterprise applications that current language models cannot reach.
So if you're going to take away a few things from today's episode, here's what I'd remember.
Number 1. The company that can prove its workers understand what they build, not just that they shipped it, will have a structural hiring and retention advantage over every competitor still measuring output volume.
Number 2. Anthropic overtaking OpenAI in revenue means the AI platform war is genuinely contested, And enterprises choosing sides right now are making bets that will compound for a decade.
Number 3. If Joe Reis is right that we're in 1905 of electrification, the biggest winners of the AI era probably haven't reorganized their companies yet, and the biggest losers are the ones who think buying tools is the same as transformation.
And finally, 80% of global venture capital flowing into one sector isn't a trend. It's a gravitational singularity, and the correction, whenever it comes, will be felt far beyond tech.
That's the Synthetic Daily for today. All the sources and links are on the website if you want to dig deeper.
Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow.